Ministry is one of the most rewarding callings a person can answer, but it can also be one of the most painful. Whether you've been forced out of a church, burned out in silence, spiritually wounded by those you trusted, or you're simply trying to make sense of the hurt, you are not alone. Welcome to Wounded Leadership, Stories from the Wounded, a podcast where pastors, church leaders, and ministry families come together to share their stories with honesty, vulnerability, and hope. Your host, Dr. Matthew Tanner, sits down with real leaders who have walked through the fire and found their way to the healing process on the other side. We believe that your story matters. We believe that healing is possible, and we believe that helping those who have been wounded in ministry find healing isn't just a mission, it's a calling. So, grab that cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and let this conversation meet you right where you are.
Welcome to Wounded Leadership Stories from the Wounded podcast, where we discover the raw, unfiltered stories of those who have been through wounding, but also have found pathways to healing. I'm excited to have my brother, Dustin Kleinschmitt. We met like literally 20 minutes ago, immediately found out we're related, and our parents probably would have separated us, growing up for getting into too much trouble.
And we already recorded 2 really good podcasts without recording them.
I know. I'm going to learn to just hit record right away and catch all the good stuff, because there was some really good Instagram reels in that first one. And now everybody that's listening to this is going, now we'll never know.
Yep.
So now they're immediately upset at us before we even get started.
The best way to start a podcast, make everyone mad at you.
It's great. How to do a podcast 101. So Dustin, let you introduce yourself. We got connected through a mutual friend, Matt Davis from Ministry Transitions.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited about unpacking your story. And it's good to just have humor in the midst of the hurt, but we're going to have a good time today. So introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and we'll dive in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matthew, for having me. It's been a blast so far. I'm looking forward to more of the banter that we've been having. So
it's going to be fun.
It's going to be good. My name is Dustin Kleinschmidt. That is a painfully German name. It is phonetic, so it sounds the way it spells.
Sure.
It just doesn't fit on a sports jersey ever.
What grade did you learn to spell it? Because it had to have been a little later.
Yeah, it took a while. It's funny. I had a friend in college, and he would just say if he was typing my last name, he would put a K and then just hit the keyboard, like all the letters, like as a joke. And I'm like, you're such a jerk.
You're like, but it's close.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So I did it one time. I toyed with the idea of going with Klein for short, but it just never stuck. So it just is what it is. My daughter, I've 2 boys, 23 and 20, and then my daughter's 14, and she's plays competitive volleyball, and so she's getting used to it trying to fit in her
wrapping
world.
Around in a circle.
Yeah, it's like a circle around her jerseys. It's pretty funny. Or the font's like size 12. It's really small. So I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised in LA, and did not grow up in the church or in a Christian home. My grandmother was devoutly Catholic and knew Jesus, but my mom was a product of the 70s, kind of the hippie era. She had me when she was 20 and really married my dad to spite her parents more so than anything else.
Great foundation for marriage.
Yeah, not suggested a way to start a marriage.
Right.
And so that it didn't last long. So by the time I was under 2 years old, they had already separated and divorced. And so it was me and my mom for most of my childhood. I was the stereotypical 80s latchkey kid that grew up. My mom was working full time, 40 to, between 40 and 60 hours a week. So I was making my own breakfast, walking to school, making my own dinner oftentimes. So, free range middle schoolers are dangerous. So you just want to be careful about that.
Yeah.
So And she was awesome. And, I had a stepdad in the midst of that before middle school who was violent and abusive. So there was definitely some traumatic experiences around my childhood that I've since began to process and work through. So we live in the Dallas area now, grew up in LA, moved to Dallas in 2011 to take a role at a church here. The housing market had killed the role I was at. I'm sure we'll get more into my story, but I was on staff at a church in LA and then ultimately moved to Dallas and have been here. I'm married to my wife, Stacy, for 28 years now.
Awesome.
It'll be 28 years in September, and we could not be more opposite than we are. Like personality and disposition wise, it's pretty funny. We joke that we don't have anything in common other than the things we dislike. So we both dislike the same things, but we don't like any of the same things, which is kind of entertaining.
Yeah, sure.
It's awesome and
makes picking out a restaurant really easy.
Yes, absolutely. It's great. Yeah, there's never, she wants to go for a walk, I want to watch a movie. Things that I find stupid and funny, she thinks are stupid. Like it's just right. It never ends.
So you carry the TV and go for a walk, it's compromise.
We learned early in our marriage we don't vacation well together, or at least we didn't. We've gotten better.
Yeah.
But it was like she wanted to go on adventures, I wanted to sit on a beach. Like it's just this.
The marriage podcast is later.
Yeah, it's good times. There's a lot of comedy in our relationship.
Right.
But I mean, it's 28 years. I think I'm kind of getting her on my side now. I'm starting to corrupt her enough to where she's starting to like some of the things I like. So yeah, we have 3 kids. Riley's 23, Keegan's 20, both boys, and then Kaylee's 14.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of the short version of me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know toward the end, we're going to get to your ministry now. With the Wilderness Way, and love the title. Kind of jealous that I didn't think of it first, but it's okay. We'll talk about that later. So, the Wounded Leadership is about diving into the hurts of ministries. I'm share your part of the story. You talk about childhood hurts that inform the ministry hurts. We'll get into all that. So, start us where you want to start us, and just talk about your ministry, and then how it kind of developed into hurt.
Yeah, so I never aspired to go into ministry. So I became a Christian in high school. A friend of mine and I had a class together. He started inviting me to church. I kept saying no. He started, changing his tactics, and it was like, hey, a bunch of us are going to Six Flags. Would you want to go? And I'm like, oh, I love Six Flags.
Yeah,
and then
I'm in on that.
Yeah, then it was also like, hey, and I'm dating this girl, and she has a friend. I'm like, well, now I'm in. Like,
Six Flags and girls, say less.
Yeah, you know what bait I need. And so I started going. So, I went to that Six Flags, and of course it was like 80s Christian night. I mean, because it was the 80s. And so it was like all the Christian rock bands were there, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And I had friends, but it was like this different new community that I didn't expect. The church I grew up in after that, that church was really, really good at fostering connection and community and making disciples. And, we'll talk about this more, but you don't know how good something is until you're no longer a part of it. And then you can look back and be like, wow, I didn't realize how healthy that was.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anything to compare it to. I just thought all churches were like that. But
sure.
And it wasn't devoid of its own challenges, for sure. So I started going to the church. The girl that I started seeing broke up with me. And so I decided to keep going to the church to spite her. So I literally was like, she's going to see me. Yeah, she's going to see me every Wednesday night, and I'm going to date every girl in this group. Like that was kind of that's the delusional middle school or high school brain I had. And all the rest of the girls in that ministry weren't going to date me, which is even funnier. But yeah, that was my thought.
So you went in with
had much higher standards.
This conquest mentality, and then got rejected. This is great for middle school.
Yes. Oh yeah. So
image.
So I'm in, and I'm going to the youth group, and we would do a service project once every couple of months at what was called the Los Angeles Mission in downtown LA, where we would go and we would serve a meal to the homeless people, and our youth pastor would share the gospel. And, it was a normal thing. And so the first time I went down, and I remember we're sitting in the deacon's chairs kind of on the side of the stage. It's kind of an old crusty building and has kind of that more traditional big oak wood stage platform with the deacon's chairs on the side and the pulpit in the middle. And and our youth pastor sharing the gospel to the homeless people who were sitting in the kind of pews before the meal. And I remember in my mind just going, in my heart just going like, I think I believe this.
Yeah, wait a minute.
And it was just this, it was, again, like I didn't have any theological framework or depth. I hadn't read the Bible. I'd gone to a couple Catholic masses, and I wasn't having some sort of 15-year-old existential crisis about what happens when I die.
Right.
I was just a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, my friend who had started inviting me was like, "Hey, what'd you think of tonight?" And I said, I think we need to talk. And so we began to talk, and I gave my life to the Lord and really dove headfirst. And having grown up in and around having a single mom, having very little kind of guardrails for decision making, like it really became a family really fast. And I had a small group leader who was phenomenal. Still love this family to death. His name's Steve, but we would do small group every Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. at his house. And he would say, "Hey guys, my door's open. I'm here with my Bible. If you guys don't show up, I'll do my quiet times. I'll go to the office."
Wow.
But a bunch of us high school boys would drag our butts in there, and we would talk about real things. Like it wasn't just how do you become biblically smarter, but it was like, hey, how do you deal with lust? How do you honor the people around you? How do you honor your mother and father when things aren't going well? Like,
real life stuff.
Yeah, it was very integrated. And again, like you don't know what you have until you realize that that's not the norm for most.
Sure.
So I did. So I really kind of dove in and has been, was kind of developing there. Didn't have a plan to go into ministry or anything. In college, became really close with the college pastor, and he really became kind of that next major mentor figure in my life. We became roommates. And the way the joke goes, and it's not too far from the truth, is I had bought a guitar because girls like guitarists. I knew 4 chords, he knew 3 chords, and so that made me the worship guy for the college ministry.
Yeah, you're going to start a band.
Yeah, well, you just wait. The story, we're getting there.
Sorry,
we're
I'm getting
almost there. Yeah, you shot ahead of me. But we did. I would lead worship, and we were doing kind of, it was called at the time like a cell ministry model, which was kind of an intensive small group formation model. And this is in the era of, primarily Sunday school on campus, adult Bible fellowship type groups.
Right.
But there was this cool organic thing, and we were doing small groups in dorm rooms on campuses and developing leaders, and it was really dynamic, and we were seeing a lot of life change, and it was just really, really cool. And I was leading worship for it and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. Cause like I did a couple semesters in college. They didn't go well. I didn't have any direction. I was working kind of on and off, trying to just kind of make my ends meet, and just had no real direction. And as I was learning to lead worship, a friend of mine dared me to write some songs. And so I wrote a couple songs, or a couple of us did, kind of for fun.
Yeah.
And then we performed them at a camp. And then were people like, "Hey, those don't stink." And it's like, "Oh, okay.
Those aren't terrible."
Yeah, cool. And so then, and then a friend of mine is working at a radio station. He's like, "Hey, we'll sneak in one night and we record them." And so like all of these little, it's like you see God's hand in it, but it's
the
like
80s
all of
were
these little,
so fun, man.
Yeah, it's so fun. It was, and it's like, it's always nice to see God's hand in a misdemeanor. Like, hey, we're going to break into a radio station and record these songs.
That's a good book title, God Through the Misdemeanors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So, and that's how I would describe us. Like, we were mischievous kids. Like, we were good kids. We loved Jesus. We loved one another. There weren't a lot of felonies in our group, but there were quite a few misdemeanors, right? We just, there were a lot of parent phone calls and like, "Hey, you guys," a lot of getting taken off of the camp bus and being scolded for being a little bit too rowdy.
Sure.
We were that group, to the point where my wife at the time, actually, when I was a senior, she came into that youth group. And I remember at one point I was like, "Were you ever like, did you know me and know of me?" Because we didn't connect. She's like, "Yeah, your group of guys were crazy. Like we wanted nothing to do with you."
That's not a good question to ask. You're like, "Did you like me back then?" She's like,
"Yeah, no, I was curious because like we were around each other." She's like, "No, you were a nightmare. I didn't want to
nowhere near you."
So I just was kind of slowly developing. Well, to make a long story really short, those couple songs developed into more songs, developed into a band, like a ragtag band.
Yeah.
Developed into, "Hey, maybe I want to do something with this, but I don't know what I'm doing." And got offered kind of a production deal from a pretty major studio. our bass player's dad was a lawyer, and he looked at the contract and said, "Don't sign this. It's a slavery contract."
Wow.
And so we were kind of like, okay, no, don't do that. And literally I was working at a Christian bookstore because there used to be a thing called bookstores.
Yeah, I remember those.
Remember those? And
Yeah.
and one of our elders from the church came in and he's like, "Hey, are you still doing music?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sort of. I don't know." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Well, do you have any recordings?" And I had a recording on me. He's like, "I grew up with a guy. He grew up in Natchez, Mississippi. He's like, one of my best friends growing up is a musician and has, played with big artists. And he's kind of looking to do some stuff locally. He's a believer."
Yeah.
And so he handed off my demo, and these guys called me and were like, "Hey, we'd be interested in working with you and signing you to a production deal and helping you develop as an artist." And they really became like these really cool mentors again. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go be a rock star. Like that's what I'm going to do.
This is it.
And they did, like we worked, like it felt like a job. Like it was a job you weren't getting paid for. It's like when you showed up to the studio, it was like, okay, you get 2 takes to cut this guitar. And if you can't cut it, I'm cutting it for you because we don't have the time. We're just burning money.
Wow.
It's like, okay. And so you learn. I had to practice. And by then I've developed some musical skill. I've started to learn theory.
Sure.
And, put together bands, start playing a lot of the clubs in Hollywood. And we were doing stuff that was faith oriented, but kind of like trying to kind of cross that line between the two.
Yeah.
And so we did that for 7 years, really, really chased that a career in the music business and worked really hard to develop that and released an EP and got some regional success, use air quotes around that, but never really got it to the point where it was going to go over the hump and become a career. And in the midst of it, I was on stage at a club. The club was called the Coconut Teaser. It's in Hollywood, on Hollywood Boulevard. And we were playing a set, and it's like, I'm not a guy that could say like God speaks audibly often, but it was as close to audible as it could be, in the sense was him just saying, "Okay, you're done with this." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like what? Like I was so confused because it was such a foreign thought. And so went home and was talking with my mentor, the college pastor. I said, "Hey, I think I'm done with the rock star thing." And he goes, "Oh, that's really interesting." He goes, "I've been praying about a role at the church of a student ministries worship pastor."
Wow.
That would help develop and cultivate a culture of worship in our student ministries, develop musicians, develop leaders. He's like, "I thought of you." He's like, "But you were kind of on this other road." And he's like, "Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah."
It's like tailor-made.
Yeah. And so again, like this position had never existed before at our church or any church that we could find. And so we really didn't think the elders were going to go for it. Like a full-time position doing what? Like, and granted, a good sized church. So our high school ministry was over 100 students. We had about 85 to 100 college students. Like it was robust. So it wasn't like it was a completely insane idea.
Right.
But we pitched it to the elders and they were like, "We love it. Let's do it."
Wow.
And they hired me full time. And so all of a sudden I find myself as a licensed pastor. I haven't done a theological degree.
So you just thrust into the ministry at this point. Like, here you go.
Yeah. And I've been in and around. And again, that church was so good at developing leaders. I had a really good theological framework. I had a good exegetical framework.
Yeah.
Like, because I had been in that world, and so I was developing in some cool ways. And so It wasn't like I was the blind leading the blind. And I mean, for example, that just to show you kind of that story. So I'm leading worship. We start this worship academy. We start developing things. And then I become kind of a Swiss Army knife at times as it develops, where it's like, hey, could you help out with high school ministry in this area?
Yeah.
And, I didn't know I had a teaching gift or anything. And then one point, a Christian school was like, "Hey, would you come do a chapel session on worship?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
And so I stole every Louis Giglio illustration I could find. And
yeah, because we didn't have AI back then. We had to actually
go. You had to actually plagiarize if you were going to do it.
You were old school plagiarizers, okay?
It was old school plagiarism.
We had to go find the book and write it down.
Yeah, for the 300 students that were in that room and 12 teachers, they had no idea that I was ripping off Louis Giglio verbatim, basically. But I did the chapel, and Dave didn't tell me. My mentor, the college pastor, he came and he was standing in the back. And when it was done, we were walking out together, and he's like, "How'd you feel it went?" I said, "I think it went okay." And he goes, "Man," you may have some giftings here. I'd love to help you develop those."
Wow.
And so then he just started rotating me and teaching in college on a Sunday night or teaching in high school ministry. And he would sit in the back, I would prepare my message. I would bring it to him. He and I would go over it, and he'd be like, "Okay, what are you trying to say here?" And
sure.
So, I mean, he's really helping me learn how to communicate.
Sounds like great development.
Yeah, it was. And that just shows you. And then like after the message, like the next day he'd be like, hey, let's talk. And he'd be like, hey, what stood out to you? What went well? What do you think you could do better?
Sure.
And so it was very, not in a soft way, nurturing, but it was like, Dave's one of the few leaders I ever worked with that really was about seeing others flourish beyond him.
Yeah.
More so than his own flourishing.
Yeah.
He never commoditized us, which as you and I know is a challenge in ministry.
Sure.
It's very easy to become a commodity for someone else's vision.
Mm.
And Dave was never like that, and he had his issues as well. But so that really was I was in that environment and grew in that environment and got a lot of amazing opportunities and really developed. And then when the housing market changed in 2008-9 and the economy collapsed, basically my position got cut. And by then I'm, established as a pastor and it's been 7+ years. And so I start interviewing at, positions around the country, and we end up here in Dallas at a church where I had known the guys that had planted the church because they had planted from near where we grew up in Southern California.
Gotcha.
And I just reached out to him and said, hey, if you know of anything, let me know. And he's like, I don't know of anything, but I'll keep you in mind. And then literally he got off the phone with me, the senior pastor, went to a meeting with his worship guy, and his worship guy resigned. And so he called me back and he's like, hey, tell me more about
that conversation.
So 2011, we moved to Dallas. I was kind of a worship and discipleship hybrid role because it was a smaller church. And then we handed off the worship thing. And I was on staff at that church for 7 years. And that's where I really got introduced to less than healthy leadership, I would say. The senior pastor, well-intentioned guy, had come from a mega church and a really famous mega church, and a very well-known senior pastor, but he definitely had his issues. And about a year in working with him, I started to realize that there were some things that I was bumping up against leadership-wise where I was uncomfortable, and I couldn't put a name to it. And I remember at one point I confronted him on something, like confronted in a nice way, like, hey man, I'm concerned about this. I see this going on with this staff person. And he basically said, hey, if I want your opinion, I'll tell it to you. And I remember going home to my wife and saying like, hey, I don't know if this is going to be our last stop, because I really hoped that we were going to be there for the rest of ministry, right?
Well, yeah, because that's how you go into it. You don't go in to
100%.
leave.
No.
And it's such a contrast between what you grew up in and what you were developed in. And I was going to ask, were you, I mean, with the housing crisis, there were outside factors. So were you really that wounded from having to leave that? You go somewhere else and kind of expect the same thing.
Yeah, there was some woundedness. I think my relationship with Dave had changed over the years. I had grown and matured, and I think I wanted more of a peer relationship where
he never could get out of that.
Yeah, I would go to him and share all my stuff, but it was like I started to feel like more of a project. Like he was trying to turn me into the perfect ministry machine.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him about that, but again, like all of us are broken and flawed. And so he had his issues.
Right.
Now I would take 100 Daves over what I ended up in.
Oh, sure. Yeah. 1,000%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, at the time, you don't know that. You just know that I'm in my 20s and I'm frustrated, and it's like, you're holding me back, and I didn't handle it the best. Right. So I threw a temper tantrum. And so there was some of that, but it was as much just the lack of clarity and relational connectedness than it was like unhealth, as you would call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And there were gaps in his leadership. Dave had been such a significant part of that church for so long. He kind of was like a golden boy. And so the gaps in his leadership were missed by upper leadership for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And it was myself and other leaders under him that were wrestling with those gaps and trying to figure out, because we knew his heart. And so it was this weird thing of like, I know Dave is for me and love me, but I'm really frustrated with something and I can't figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
And those are the spaces where it kind of can go sideways. So that was, I kind of think, what I was dealing with there. Then with this other guy, the senior pastor of this church, like I knew like, oh, this is not good. And I remember praying about it. And I remember going home telling my wife, hey, this might not be our last stop. And she's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, we move away from family, away from mountains, away from beaches. And a year in, you're like, I don't know. Yeah. And she was not pumped on that, because that move was really, really hard for her.
She was less than excited.
Less than excited is a fair way of saying it. But we prayed, and it was like our sense from the Lord was, you serve and trust me with him. And I was like, well, that's a really stupid idea. Because I can tell you what's wrong, and I could fix it if he would let me.
Yeah,
right?
so you're saying,
like,
God, I've got to sit here and keep watching what's wrong, and he's not going to give me a voice. How's that going to help?
100%. And not become angry and vengeful.
Yeah,
and, mean... But that was, and I think this was the Lord saying, hey, I got stuff I want to teach you, know, about these things. And the image he said was like, hey, you just be Aaron, hold his arms up best you can. Wow. And I'm like, but his arms smell, and that's a horrible idea. Like and so it was very much this wrestling match.
He forgot his leadership deodorant, Lord. I mean, it's kind of odd.
It was this wrestling match, but to the credit of the Spirit in me for the next 6 years, I really did. I just tried to put my head down, control what I can control, lead the best I could, honor the best I could, still be honest about things, but not like pick and choose my battles in essence. But, as it went on, the Lord did make it clear, like, my sense was, hey, I think we need to be we're being called to leadership in the church. And the Lord was like, okay, what are you missing for that? And I was like, formal education. And he was like, yeah. That would help.
Yeah, let's pick that.
Let's go take some Bible classes. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're going to school.
Went back to school, got a degree in ministry,
awesome.
And that was really good. It was humbling because it's like, I'm a father of 3, full-time pastor, and I'm, sitting with a bunch of 21-year-olds in a New Testament survey class, just at night, no less, rolling my eyes going, what am I doing here?
They're looking at you like you were there. What was it like back then?
Yeah, exactly. So did you chisel on like stone when you were writing papers? Shut up, idiots. But again, like I think God's using all this stuff to kind of cultivate and push me and grow me and stuff. So in the midst of that, we ultimately landed on that God was leading us towards planning a church. And so at about 7 years in, I went to 6 years in, went into the senior pastor and said, hey man, I think God's calling us to plant a church. And to his credit, like they were very supportive of me going to school. He helped pay for it. The church helped pay for it. He was like, we'll make room in your schedule to make sure you can do that and still be a good dad and still be a good husband. And so like there was some really, I don't want to paint an exclusively bad picture. Like there was a lot of support there.
Sure.
And that's what makes leadership wounds hard, right? Because it's not exclusively bad or exclusively good. It's like, man, I learned a lot from that guy. And I saw God do really, really cool things through him. And yet, there was some deep, deep issues as we'll get to.
I think it polarizes those things. It makes the wounds deeper because like there were so many good things that I learned, but.
Yeah. And it also, I mean, if you're like me, it's very easy for me to go, well, maybe I am the problem.
100%.
Because I am contrarian, right? And it's like it's my spiritual gift is contrarianism. I've decided.
With
that and sarcasm.
She took it from me. I was going to say that.
Did I? Was that your? Oh, I'm sorry. I totally stole you.
You took it. I was about to deliver that. It was going to be the pinnacle moment of the podcast.
We can go back and do it again, and you can just edit out.
I'll just edit that out, and I'll put it in as if I came up with that because it's my podcast.
Okay, great.
But anyway, keep going.
So there's like this sense of like when you're being gaslit. And in a way of being told like, hey, like you need to stop being so critical. Like we're like, you're creating disunity in the leadership. And I'm like, no, I'm voicing concerns, but when uniformity is unity, then, and everyone else on staff, this will give you a little snapshot. Everyone else on staff is younger believers, all from the same ecosystem. Like I was the first outside hire that had his own formation and kind of come up in a different way and didn't kind of see him as a spiritual father. Right. And so like there was things there that were like, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, but to their credit, he did say, like they helped. And, I said, I think we're supposed to go plant, and we prayed about it. We found the area we still live in today, Murphy, Texas. And, they were supportive to the degree that I think he was really glad that God was moving me on and he could do it in a way where he looked good.
Yeah. We sent them out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the way I describe it is he got up in front of the church and said, hey, this church's having a baby. and everyone clapped, and they brought me up and they prayed over me. And then he took that baby and dropped it off at a fire station, and never talked to it again. It's like, put me in my little cradle, stuck a check for a couple $1,000s in there, and was like, good luck, buddy. And so we set out with about 15 people. We had a handful of families that literally sold their homes and moved with us, and which terrified me because I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. Like,
I'm responsible for all these.
I have a fat clue what I'm doing. Like,
now I'm responsible for them too.
Yeah, we started the church in my living room of this house we started renting in 2017. My daughter's room was the nursery, and the upstairs media room was the kids' ministry area, and we just went for it. And the area we moved to was far more pluralistic. The town we came from was very evangelical, Bible belty, conservative. Like it just is very, very insulated.
Yeah.
And we moved to an area that, like, the area we live in is 22% Muslim. So it was like, wow, we have this opportunity to reach a people. Growing up in LA, I was very comfortable and used to ethnic diversity and racial diversity and spiritual diversity. And then I was in this bubble for 7 or 8 years that felt very stifling and very evangelical and very fake at times. And I'm like, I kind of prefer the other.
A little cultural shift for you.
Yeah. And so going back to where we are now and planning a church in that was really, really good. And so we did that for 4 years. COVID really became kind of the death nail, where it was like, we knew we were basically going to have to start over post-COVID. And we as a leadership team, we had developed an elder team. We just didn't feel comfortable doing that to our people. Like, if the choice was push through, run some people into the ground and end up with this thing called a church, versus help people assimilate, help them continue to be healthy in their marriages and their relationships best we can. And continue to love Jesus and not have the thing, I would rather have the latter.
Yeah.
And so we let that go. And in the midst of that, the church I had come from, the senior pastor had resigned. It turned out he had been having an affair with one of the staff people, a bunch of stuff. And so it just decimated that church. Like, that church just collapsed because like all the staff revolted against the elders all resigned. Like, it was a mess. And the leadership, the guy that had replaced me, and then some of the leadership that had kind of come to the surface in the midst of all the carnage, I had been in contact with them and been like, hey man, I'm sorry. I'm praying for you guys. I love you guys. Cause I had a deep love for that church and for those people. And they ultimately ended up saying, hey, would you be willing to come? And originally it was like, come consult and help us figure this out. Cause they knew we were transitioning out, and that led to them saying, hey, would you come back and lead the church? And my wife and I knew that it was going to be hard.
So you took over the remnant?
Yeah. And, at its heyday, when I left, it was 850 plus adults. It was exploding. We were doing 4 services in this little building. While I was gone doing the church plant, they bought land, built a building. COVID hit. The senior pastor goes on a sabbatical because of burnout, comes back, resigns, comes out he'd been having an affair. Like, it's just bananas, right?
Yeah, everything's just falling apart.
Yeah, and people are wounded. They don't trust. And so we knew, like, my wife and I, when we prayed about it, it's like, hey, this is going to be a beating. And I'm going to use the illustration, like the analogy I drew. And it's a little bit crass, but I think it helps articulate where I was at. So going back, I told my wife, I said, look, this church, it was called Cornerstone. I said, this church is like the abusive ex-boyfriend that called you and says, hey, I've been in counseling and I have to own that I've made some mistakes and I'm really sorry. And I did not treat you well, and I love you, and I want us to get back together.
Can you come back?
You as the abused go, I do see change, and I do see growth, and I see some healthy things. But if we go back, we're going to get punched in the mouth. Like, because growth is never linear, right? Healing is never linear.
Absolutely.
And we knew that, and I've been around enough church transitions at my previous church and other places where the first person to kind of step into the chaos usually takes the biggest hit.
Yeah. So you knew what you were getting into.
100%. Oh, no, 50%, not 100%.
Let me dial that back, actually.
Yeah. You understand it conceptually. You don't understand what it's going to do to your soul.
That's huge.
What the toll it's going to take, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
so
huge.
So we stepped back in, and I mean, my key card hadn't even swiped the door the first day. before just it's bananas. The culturally, there was a part-time teaching pastor who had been kind of helping out, but he was kind of like a stepdad. He lived far away. He had a full-time other job and was doing a PhD.
Oh, wow.
And kept telling us as elders, like, well, I don't know how long I can do this. And I'm going like, no, man, like, I think you should step away. And then it becomes, I'm the bad guy for forcing him out. And it's like, no, that's not but again, like, you're not going to stand up there and say, let me tell the whole church every nuanced detail, right?
Right.
And they had just taken possession of this building, and now they've got the mortgage for that building, and half the church is left, and then a disgruntled elder who wanted to be the lead pastor, and then they asked me to do it, so then he takes his ball and goes home and grabs 50 people and goes and plants a church. And
wow.
And so people that I had been really good friends with years earlier are now sitting in coffee shops going, why are you doing this? What are you doing? You're ruining it. And it's like, whoa.
You became the target.
110%.
Yeah.
And I can say this because I've told the elders that developed in and around the elders that were there when I came back did a good job standing with me and all of that, going, hey man, this stinks. I'm sorry you're going through this. They never stood in front of me. And it was as much their decisions as mine. Like, I wasn't in a vacuum going, all right, we're going to let that guy go. And then we're going to do this. Like, there was,
but they were all too glad to let you be out there.
Yeah. Like, I'm getting kicked in the groin without a cup, and they're going, man, that's got to hurt.
Yeah. That really stings for you. Can you come talk to this other guy?
100%. And not exclusively, like, they did engage where they could. But again, those guys have jobs and families. They're grieving the loss too. They're dealing with the emotional toll as well. Like, they're fighting. So it was just a whole mess. And so, the first year was, we got to cut staff because we don't have the money, and we've burned through some savings, and we transitioned a teaching guy out, and he doesn't leave well. And now so we're pivoting, and we're trying to set a vision forward, and so it's just all of those things. Then year 2 was like, okay, starting to stabilize a little bit, starting to get some traction a little bit, but still some pretty significant unhealthy leadership stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to address graciously. And I'm at a posture at this point of like, I don't want to yank the wheel too fast. Like, I want to be slow. I want to be cautious. The last thing these people in this church need is more transition.
Yeah.
But then you've got young leaders who are going, well, what the heck? Why are we waiting so long? Why aren't we moving faster? What are you, inept? Like, so it's this. So as a leader, you're trying to navigate all of it. And again, and in the midst of that, you're going like, okay, Lord, like, what do you want from me? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Right.
And I'm willing to take the hits. But so all of that's going on. And we're having arguments over theology. We're having arguments. I mean, like, people coming to me in the church over philosophy, over practice, over, you name it. There was an argument to be had, and someone emailing me about something.
Yeah.
Including staff. And then, so I made it 3 years, and we had confronted one of the elders / other pastors on some blind spots, and I would say some work ethic issues.
Yeah.
And it had not gone well, but we were trying to navigate it. And I was trying to transition him into a part-time role because he had another business on the side. And I felt like that would be best for him and for the church. It would free up some capital.
Yeah.
Because I needed help. And in all of this, it wasn't like I didn't know that I was wearing out. We had a practice with our elder leaders, our elder team. There were 3 elders, four elders at the time, 3 or 4. And one of them's job was to check with my wife once a month and just say, hey, how is he doing? Because I could say whatever I wanted.
Sure. Yeah. You could lie to him.
Yeah. But she was going to be honest and be like, eh. And so he would call her.
Yeah.
And she, and dialogue things. And one of the calls, he said, hey, Stacy, how's he doing? And she's like, it's not going well. And the elder asked her, how long do you think he can keep this up? And she said, no more than 12 more months.
Wow.
Just because of the pace of ministry. So again, like, all this is going on, but it's not that we're unaware of this. I knew that that there was a short shelf life, and we were getting towards the end of it for myself emotionally, unless we were able to make some changes and really kind of settle.
Yeah. Because it's a major remodel.
100%. And we had an elder meeting scheduled to kind of deal with this other leader issue. And 2 of our young leaders, a youth pastor and a worship guy, in essence, crashed the meeting, said, hey, we need to talk with you guys, and showed up to this meeting and basically went around the room telling us how bad we were as leaders and how they couldn't follow us anymore. And And I'm sitting there going, in my head, I'm going, okay, so now I got to transition this guy to part-time and I got to fire these two guys because they've literally said, we don't want to follow you anymore.
Yeah.
So it's either,
they've dropped the
that
nuke.
means either I go or you go. Like,
yeah.
Like, and
they've drawn the
like
line
that,
in the sand at this point.
100%. And then as I'm kind of processing in my head, I'm listening to some of the elders kind of like lean to their side of like, well, like, what would you do then? What would you do different? And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, and again, I think it's born out of the fatigue and born out of the frustration. And basically they sent those guys away to go come up with a plan. What would you do different? And I left that meeting. We never even addressed the reason we were there. Like we never talked about it. And I walked out and I got in my car and I called my wife and I said, I just don't see a way forward because I knew what was in front of me. I was going to have to either force the full-time to part-time for one guy, which he was not keen on, and let go of two guys who were doing a good job at their roles, but were clearly over their skis in their leadership.
Yeah.
And were typical young 20s or mid 20s, arrogant, right? I was that guy. I understood it. So I was going to have to let all those guys go, figure out how to replace them, and be the source of more fallout.
Yeah, because everybody's not going to know the full story.
Exactly. And so I just decided I'd rather leave.
Wow.
And let you guys figure that out. And I wrestled with it for a couple of days and then called the head of the elder board and just said, hey man, like I think I'm the first domino in this.
Wow.
And so I gave my resignation and stayed for the next 3 months to the end of the year. And it was really hard. They ended up, which even made it worse, was they ended up taking that youth guy that had instigated this and made him the lead guy.
Oh, wow.
Because that was the path of least resistance to them.
It was easier.
Yeah, even though all of us had said weeks earlier, like, there's no way we see him ready for leadership.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was a lot, and it was a culmination of years of just kind of navigating these things. And
years of being beat up.
Yeah. And I resigned thinking, okay, I can take a deep breath and then I'll figure it out. And it was about a month into my resignation that I had a full breakdown. And
wow.
Panic attacks. I'd never had a panic attack before in my life. Even through all of that, I'd never had a panic attack. And all of a sudden I can't breathe and my chest is tight and
it just all came out.
Like it's, there's a book called The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah.
And it is 100% accurate. And my body finally was like, okay, we got to deal with this. And we were visiting a church, just attending, because in all of this, I never lost my love for the church and I never lost my love for Jesus. And
wow.
But we were visiting a church and we bumped into someone who knew someone we knew, like kind of adjacent from the church I'd come from. And all of a sudden I just started having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And so we got in the car and I told my wife, I'm like, I got to call somebody. And so a friend of mine had recommended a counselor who had been in ministry, and actually most of his counseling is with missionaries who have come off the missionary field.
Yeah.
In similar situations. And I met with him and still meet with him to this day. We still meet.
Wow.
And that began this journey of like, okay, who am I? What the heck's going on in me? The instinct is, okay, I just have to find a new pastoral job because I need a job. And then God's like, no, we're calling time out.
Yeah, because we try to find comfort in that identity. And it's like, that's not going to heal us.
Correct. And for me, it was going to take a long time to kind of flesh all of that out. And so that's been the last 3 years has been this journey of like, okay, who am I? Why am I here? What do I care about? What am I willing to give energy to? What am I not willing to give energy to? What are my values? All of those things.
Yeah. How did the wounds, I mean, the crash out, I mean, you've been holding all this stuff back, and it's what we do as pastors. We concentrate on that leadership role. We don't give ourselves margin to unpack these things.
Mm-hmm.
Barely out of it, and all of a sudden it's all rushing back in. How does that lead to those kind of questions?
Well, one, the counselor was really helpful.
The counselor said, you need to be answering these. You need to be asking these questions.
Yeah. And I think, he started with, you need a sabbatical. So
sure.
Like we just and I'm like, well, I got to pay bills. And it was, again, interesting. One of those times where the Lord's like, you serve and trust me to provide. And again, I said, that's a really dumb idea. And And yet it was
Yeah.
really funny to watch. Like as soon as I said, okay, like I would get calls from like random friends of mine who were like, hey man, like there's this little church near you that they need someone, an itinerant guy just to speak on a couple Sundays. It's like $50 a Sunday. Could you do that? Yeah, that's great. There's like 7 people, like 7. It was like, cool. Like,
Yeah.
I can go love on 7 people. Like, that's great.
It's so easy. It's free to teach in places like that.
Yeah. And then it was like another friend's like, hey, we had to transition out our worship guy. Could you pinch hit for a little while? And I'm like, well, I haven't played worship in 10 years, but okay.
Yeah. It's like riding a bike. You'll fall off a couple of times, skin your knee, but it'll be fun.
Yeah. And so I kind of started doing that a little bit on the side. So it was like these little things where I could just have these touch points without being committed to anything.
Right.
And then, my counselor and I started really exploring my childhood and the abusive stepfather and my view of myself. I became very much intrigued by attachment theory. And there's a great book called The Relational Soul that was really helpful because it's kind of a mix of the gospel and attachment theory kind of together in a really, really cool, holistic way. And so that was helpful. And so I'm just kind of exploring and learning how to just listen to myself and understanding, beginning to understand that I have what they would call anxious and avoidant or disorganized attachment, right? So I simultaneously feel like too much and not enough oftentimes.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting space to be in,
Sure.
especially in and around ministry where it's like, I got to tone myself down. I can't be all of me. I got to be a version of me. But I feel like I'm not doing enough. I'm not being enough. And so there's this constant tension. And I think in all of that time in ministry, especially those last 3 years, I really had just lost me because I was working so hard to be who the church needed me to be, at least who I thought they needed me to be. And I couldn't be me because me was either too much, too liberal, too conservative, too you name it.
It was always comparative, the opposite of whatever you're facing.
Correct. Exactly. And in that lost who I was and what things God had put on my heart and how he had created me. And, every superpower has a shadow side, right? And
100%.
but I had become so fixated on seeing what the shadow sides were that I forgot that these were also superpowers. And so my ability to catalyze and move things forward had become like a weapon that people were using against me.
Wow.
So there was a lot of that just needed to be peeled back and it couldn't be done quickly. It just needed time. And so I just did, I sat, did counseling weekly, dove into my childhood, dove into all those things. Unfortunately, part of my personality is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So I don't just kind of dabble.
Yeah.
So now it's like, hey, we're going to do a life map thing, kind of like your story map. And like, okay, we're going to do a life map. And so I'm doing a life map and I'm diving deep, but there was these subtle transactional things. And this will lead into the book. It's these subtle transactional things in my heart that I didn't fully realize where I was going. Okay, well, if I can just figure out why I feel this way and why this happened, then I could be fixed and move forward, right? It's like, if I could solve the Rubik's Cube, then I will be whole again.
And then it becomes if I can solve it fast enough or if I can,
correct.
It always has a parameter you can't reach.
100%. And it's just not how we are far too beautifully complex.
Yeah.
For that to be solved that way.
Sure.
And so that actually led even into a darker hole where I got to the point where I was so depressed. And on my 50th birthday, I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know if I want to live anymore. And I talk about that in the book. And to her credit, like my wife, it wasn't that I wanted to do something. It was very much an Elijah in the wilderness going like, yeah, I'm good. Like, yeah, we've had a good run.
We've had a great run. We're done.
I had the Mount Carmel thing.
Heaven.
Let's just call it.
I've read the book. Heaven's great. Let's go.
Yes. Exactly. Very much where I was at. And, talked to my counselor about it. And he was like, okay, we're done with a deep dive on your childhood for right now. Like, let's press pause there. Let's get you with the doctor and see if we can get some medication to help kind of like equilibrium, which was very helpful.
Sure.
And then it just became a more measured pace. And it was me learning like I keep a Rubik's Cube on my desk at all times that's unsolved on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it reminds me I'm not a problem to solve. The church isn't a problem to solve. My wife isn't a problem to solve. My career isn't a problem to solve. Like God isn't a problem to solve. Like I very much, I have that Bob the Builder, we can fix it. Yes, we can mentality.
Right.
And it was part of, I think, my culpability in the church stuff. Was I come into the church just really struggling. I'm like, oh, I know what we can do to fix this. And I'm probably right. But then I become myopic in how do we fix it? And then my means of going about that probably at times they may have been the right things, but not approached the right way. Right.
Yeah. And I think
so,
it's important to realize that even in wounding in leadership, even that's not a problem to solve. It's a
correct.
process.
Yes, 100%. And that's been the greater thing in all of this, was realizing that, like, okay, the Spirit will do the work the Spirit does. My job is to be available, vulnerable, honest, open, not try and force it, not try and fix it. Just even learning how to articulate, this is how I feel. One to God, like, hey, God, this feels unfair. I'm not saying it is unfair. I'm saying it feels unfair. Clearly you're God, you're right, I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, it's the Psalms. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And that ability to just start to say, okay, here's how I feel, or even with my wife, go, hey, I feel hurt by you. I'm not saying you hurt me. I'm saying I feel hurt. And I had never done that before. I was always quick to cut it off and be like, no, that's me. I'm being a dork. And so I would shove it down versus articulate it.
Not allowed to do that because I've got this ministry identity I've got to go do.
Yes, exactly. Or whatever it would be. And so that was a significant tool in the healing tool belt of like, okay, I'm just going to learn to say what the sensations are. And again, without judgment on the person who might have caused it or judgment on myself, but just observationally, right? I feel anxious right now. No reason to feel anxious, but I feel anxious, right? Whatever it would be.
Let me just call it what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this is clinical 101, but you're right. The psalmists do such a great job. David specifically, right? Like,
sure.
Heck, David looks bipolar at times because he's like,
first half of the song.
Where are you?
This sucks.
Where are you, God? Yes.
Second half. I know you're still God. Can we go back to the first half? No.
It's like, this sucks. Smite my enemies.
You're God.
I will trust you. And that's the song.
Yeah.
And he's got a cool harp and lyre that he's playing.
Yeah, he just does it so much more beautiful than we could.
Yes. So that's been, in a nutshell, that's been the journey of at least my personal development and my personal healing, and learning how to, one of the key things that my counselor had me do is we really define, like, what do I value? I'm 52 now. And so 2 years ago, I was just turning 50, and it was like, man, like, I'm on the backside. So it's like, what am I willing to give myself to?
Sure.
What do I care about? And what does ministry look like? And I'm not talking just vocationally. I'm just talking like, what does it look like to pour my life out for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of others? And whether I get paid for it or not became secondary. And untangling that was actually really healthy. Untangling my vocation from following Jesus and being a minister of the gospel was really healthy and helpful.
Yeah, that's such a pitfall that we fall into, is that we combine all of that into one identity. And then when that's ripped away by resignation, forced termination, all of the things, I think that's why it's so unsettling, because we lose our emotional, financial, social, spiritual foundation. And so much of our identity was wrapped up into that. No wonder it throws us off.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, we've been taught and teach, hey, the church it's the family of God. So you should be all in. And if I'm going to be the one preaching that from the pulpit, I got to be the one who's all in, right?
Right.
So you've been like, I was saturated in that. I was in it with people and in community. And so when that, whether it's forced or otherwise, like you said, you lose your sense of value, you lose a vocation. So now all of a sudden your paychecks have dramatically dropped off.
Sure. Yeah.
And oftentimes you lose the community, because even though people there might still be your friend and may not have been the ones who wounded you, it's just different. And especially if they're continuing to be part of that church because they weren't wounded, like, they don't necessarily see the things that you see, and it's not that church isn't doing good things, right? So it just becomes a different thing. And every time you hang out with those people, it's like scratching a scab.
Yeah, and I talk about this all the time. It's just like, you go into it, you talk about this identity thing. Now you go into it even when they're not making it weird, you end up making it weird because you feel like you've got this big red letter on your, on your shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all goes back to that identity thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's that's the journey, has been untangling that stuff. And in the midst of that, I was studying Exodus and just kind of in my quiet times. And, there's the basic narrative, right? Like God rescues Israel from slavery to Egypt. And then he tells them of a promised land that they will one day inherit, a land flowing with milk and honey. But in the between, they went into the wilderness, and it was a result of their stupidity and disobedience, and really their heart more so than their actions. But that was the place where God really did his formative work in them. And as I was wrestling through that, I started kind of building a parallel of like, okay, as a follower of Jesus, I've been rescued from slavery to sin and death. And one day God will restore all things, and his home will be among his people. And there will be a new heavens and new earth. He'll wipe away every tear, right? All those things, all those promises we have. And so what is in between the already but not yet? Well, it's a wilderness.
Yeah.
And this life, my contention is that this life is the wilderness, and it's always going to be a mix of beauty and brokenness, that there's going to be amazing mountaintops and deep valleys, sometimes in the same week. Right. And I had previously, before this kind of turned into this thought around the book, it was like, okay, I'm going through a wilderness season, which what did in me is then like, okay, what do I got to do to get out of this wilderness season?
Yeah.
And so all of my energy is going to, how do I get out of this? How do I fix it? How do I stop it?
Which is the exact same thing you were doing to the church.
Exactly. Versus, where is God in the midst of this? Because the one thing about the wilderness is God never left Israel. He was always with them. And even when they were, think about it. They were like, this sucks. We want to go back to Egypt. You're a cruddy God. What do you know? At least we had leeks and onions. Like, they're willing to trade leeks and onions for slavery. Like, that's insanity. But to God's credit, he could have and tried to. At some point, he's like, okay, I'm just going to wipe them out. And Moses is like, no, please don't do that. Like, these are your people. We got to be cool. Be cool. Just be cool.
Just wait a minute.
Take a lap around the block, God. Like, you'll feel better.
God's up there like, I made the block. Leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly. But he doesn't. He provides. He gives them manna, and he continues to lead a stiff-necked people. And so for me, it really became what does it look like to see God in the midst of what I'm wrestling with, instead of trying to get out of what I'm wrestling with? And it revealed this subtle quid pro quo I had with God, which, I was angry at God because in my mind, God, I did what you told me to. I went back to the hard church. I did the hard thing. I endured the pain and suffering. I was unjustly treated. So somehow it should have worked itself out. I shouldn't be the one left without a chair in this game of Ring Around the Rosie. But somehow I'm without a chair, and that's not fair, and I'm not okay with it. And, realizing that I had that, and realizing that God was like, hey man, have you read my Bible? Like in no way do I offer you that transaction.
It's like he's got the Bible out going, hold on.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where that's at in here?
Yeah. Have Job,
Don't
in this world, you will have trouble. Take heart, I've overcome the world. Right. And again, it isn't that this stuff was front of mind, but it was just revealed in my emotional content, right? As I unpacked it. And that was my main confession, was like, okay, Lord, like I've treated this transactionally, and
wow.
And that's on me, and I have to own that. And you don't owe me anything. I have preferences, and so if I get a vote,
I've got requests.
Love to throw that out, but I'm no longer going to live trying to escape the wilderness. I'm going to embrace the wilderness as the formation of who I am, and that God is working all things to the good. I'm not going to bypass the pain, right? I'm not going to just paint a verse on it and, buy a coffee mug and smile and nod. I want to grieve. I want to learn to lament.
Yeah.
So I'm going to grieve what really hurts, but I'm not going to wallow in it. I'm going to do my best to aim forward and say, okay, God, what are you doing? What are you wanting to teach me? How can I grow in this? What am I responsible for in this? Because there's ways that I've cut myself as much as I've been cut by others. And then ultimately it's like, how do those scars that form end up displaying his goodness and his grace and his mercy rather than being something I try and cover, because my compulsion is to cover my scars. Like, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Nothing's
Sure. Yeah.
Versus going, no, like this scar. Yeah, I did this one to myself. That's on me.
Yeah.
And yet God's grace is sufficient. And this scar, yeah, this was done to me by someone else and it still hurts. And yet I'm called to love and forgive. Doesn't mean I have to reconcile with them, and it doesn't mean I have to be best buddies, but I can't hold bitterness.
Wow.
I have to learn to walk in freedom from that. And again, ongoing journey, not something that happens overnight, right? So
Yeah, so completely reframing the wilderness. I mean, because one of the things that it's just really hitting me is the fact that every time we get into the wilderness, and a lot of the wounded pastors, wounded leaders, business leaders, all that, we look at the wilderness as transactional. Like, this is a symptom, or this is a byproduct of what was done to me. So yeah, let me go to the hospital for a while. I'm going to have some surgery. We're going to have recovery time. It's going to hurt for a while, but then I'm going to be able to get it back out. And that surgery's behind me. Like I said, I'll show off my scars, but the surgery's behind me. But what you're saying is like, no, we're setting up a tent in the wilderness because that's our home. And, but there's healing in that.
Yes. And so I shouldn't be shocked when I get a call from a friend who goes, hey man, I was just diagnosed with cancer. And I should be able to grieve and say, man, I'm so sorry. That's wilderness, right?
Sure.
And then go sit with them and love them and pray with them and laugh a little bit. And then go to my daughter's volleyball game and cheer and have fun, right? Those feel like they can't live.
Yeah, those are not those are not polar. You're not being two different people. You're
Correct.
just the same person in different areas of the wilderness.
Yes, because the wilderness is both beautiful and broken. I don't know if you've ever been able to visit Israel and go to the Judean wilderness.
Yeah, I have not.
But I talk about this in the book. It's fascinating because it's desert. It's just, it's desert with a desert wide brown nothingness with a valley in the middle of it that has a stream that runs through it from one of the mountains, right? But for 1 week a year in the spring, there's just enough rain because obviously Israel is fairly arid, right?
Sure.
There's just enough rain where this little short grass grows and flowers grow, and it's just a couple inches, and it carpets it, and it looks unbelievable. It's beautiful, little like wildflowers and this green grass, and it just looks like someone laid like sod all over miles and miles of brown, but it only lasts for a week or so.
Wow.
And then the heat comes back in and it kills it all. But it's like this image of like the wilderness, like there's beauty there if you're looking for it, right? Like if you're paying attention in the midst of the friend who is going through cancer, there's some beautiful things happening. Again, not to bypass, not to try and say, well, see, it's all working out.
It doesn't minimize.
This is still a bad thing. Yes, it does not minimize. And I do think the church struggles with that. I think the church tends to want to minimize it rather than sit in it.
Sure.
Like Job's friends, right? Like they did great until they started talking. They were first couple chapters crushing it.
Yeah. After that, I say this all the time. It's like finding those people that are the friends that Job needed, not what he got.
Yes, exactly. And then learning to be that. And that's, I think, one of the things I've learned is like I've become a far better friend in the sense that I've learned how to sit with people and just say, hey, I'm sorry. How can I support you? And to be able to say like, hey, like, and not just go, hey, God's in this, he's doing good things. Like to be able to say like, I don't have a fat clue why.
Yeah. I have no idea, but
I wish I could give you 3 verses that answer it for you, but
the
reality is I don't know and I won't know. And it is unfair
but I'm here,
whatever it would be. But here we are. And to his glory, God has given us one another.
Wow.
And so you're not walking the wilderness alone because I can be a tangible image of God to that person.
That's one of the biggest things for wounded leaders is they tend to isolate and just don't run from your story. Be vulnerable in it. We're in the wilderness together, so let's sit around the wilderness campfire. Let's talk about our stories and let's just be with each other.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that wounded pastor, the wounded leader just happened. He's just entering the reality of the wilderness. I almost said he's entering the wilderness, but it's not segmented. He's he's confronted with the reality of the wilderness. What do you share with them from where you're at in the wilderness, your perspective of the wilderness? What do you share with them to let them know, hey, this is going to be all right. Let's take a step back. Let's understand what the wilderness is for.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. Practically, I would say what you just said, don't walk alone. Like, I think all of us can benefit from what Scott Sauls calls an expensive friend, which is a counselor, right? Like, it's good. Like but you do need a couple people that you can talk honestly with.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's one thing. Like, you don't have to go become everyone's best friend. You don't have to jump into a new church and go sit with the pastor. And like, I'm actually not a huge advocate. I'm comfortable with someone saying, hey, I need a break from the organization.
Sure.
Right. And it's like 100%. Like, you need to breathe a little bit. The way the illustration that I designed in my head is like, when all this came down for me, I took time to kind of build my own sandbox. And in that sandbox, I healed, I played, I learned what are the rules of my sandbox? Like, what are the values that I have in my sandbox, right?
What kind of sand do I like?
Yeah. What do I want to play with? And then in time, as I really got healed or some healing and clarity there, then it was like, hey, like, you want to come play in my sandbox? And some people would come and play in the sandbox, and you're like, oh, you're not allowed back in the sandbox. You get out of here.
It's like, okay, you're done. Then, you're done.
Yeah. And like, this is Henry Cloud talking about boundaries, right? Like, So my second encouragement is like, get clear on who you are, what you care about, and then define real healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries for you are going to look different. Like, I have a boundary that I actually will not go to the town where that church is right now. And it's not because the town's evil and wrong and horrible. It's that I can't emotionally handle the triggers.
Sure.
If I go over there. And so I have friends who'll be like, hey, you want to meet for lunch? I'm like, yeah, as long as we meet anywhere but there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm cool with lunch.
That's okay.
Yes, exactly. And so some people would go, well, that seems stupid. Maybe it is, but for me that's
right
what
now,
I needed. And so I think for a leader who's wounded, who's trying to figure this out, like, what may seem unreasonable to others might be exactly what you need to do. Now, again, don't do it in isolation, because left to your own devices, you're going to make really dumb decisions.
Right. Yeah.
Like what Paul Tripp said, no one lies to us more than we do, because no one talks to us more than we do.
Yeah.
And so it's that. So you need people that you're like, hey, is this reasonable, unreasonable, people you trust? So I think those are the key things. And then the passage of scripture that really kind of became my anchor is Psalm 37, 3 and 4, which says, trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And so trust in the Lord. Okay, you're God, I'm not God. Do good. Don't manipulate, don't steal, don't lie. Like, don't try and end around. Yeah, don't try and end around to move things faster or to get your way. So trust the Lord, do good. Dwell in the land. And this is a big one for me, which was just be where you are. If you're in a valley,
be there.
Be in a valley. And look around and see there probably are some pretty cool things in the valley amongst the hard things.
Yeah.
And see who's with you, and remember that, because that person that's with you in the valley, probably someone you can lean into going forward.
Sure.
Right. So trust in the land, trust in the Lord, dwell in the land, and befriend faithfulness, which is how the ESV translates it. And I love that, because it's like, my goal is to make faithfulness my best friend.
Wow.
And that goes to every day. Like, I've done far more ministry being out of ministry.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years.
Right.
From being able to help friends who are going through hard times and having the margin to having someone live with us for a little while because they were going through a hard time. And cool. Like, the Dustin who was full-time running a church would be like, I don't know if we can do that. You know what I mean? Like,
can't add one more thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, my mind can't take that. But now to have the margin to do that stuff and to sit in those things, and so that dwelling in the land and each day going, okay, what does faithfulness today look like? What does it look like for me to be present in and around the people that I'm with? And even to the point of like prioritizing time with the misfits, like, who are the misfits in my life? When I go to my local Panera and the pierced, tatted lesbian is there, and it's like, and she sees me read my Bible, but we have a great relationship, and I'm able to go, hey, how's training going, management training going, and tell me what's going on, and I'm not put off by it. I don't have to be like self-righteous, and again, like all these things that I probably would not have been, like my impulse wouldn't be that when I was in my previous situation.
Sure.
So befriend faithfulness, and then delighting in yourself in the Lord. Like, hey, God, you're here in the middle of it. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I had better answers or more money in the bank or whatever it would be. But since I don't, I want to trust you here and now. So help me just to know what today looks like and how I can walk forward, and to do so not begrudgingly, but with a lightness in my heart and a joy, knowing that you are over all things.
Isn't that what Job means when he says at the very end, and I'm paraphrasing, up until this point, he says, with my ears, I've heard you, but now with my eyes, I want to see you.
Yes.
That's
100%.
That's embodying everything that you're just talking about.
Yeah. And it's funny how we can know these things intellectually, right? Like we learned them in Greek and Hebrew, and we've taught them to other people.
And then,
right? And then in your own life, it's just, there's an incongruence there. And that's normal. That's part of humanity. That's part of the brokenness of being fallen, right?
Sure.
And it's not a flaw in the system.
Sure.
It's part of being human. And I think
this is the
pastors,
system. We are in the wilderness.
Yes. And we as pastors and leaders could go a long way by learning how to be human again and not feeling the need to be superhuman.
Yeah.
Even with our families. I'm not even just talking about in your church.
Sure.
But, a pastor gets out of ministry or is, forced resignation, resigns, whatever it would be. And there's still that compulsion of like, now I have to be superhuman for my family. And it's okay to be able to sit there and be like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Brene Brown talks about this, about like the idea of like, I have, her and her husband have these kind of check-in conversations where he's, they'll at the end of the day where she's like, hey, I'm at about like 10%. He's like, that's okay. I'm at about 75, 80. So
we're good.
I got you.
Yeah. I got you right now. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's like, we're both at 10%. Lock the doors, close the window.
Yes. No one goes out.
Nobody turn the phones off.
Exactly.
Man, Dustin, there's so much more to cover. I wish we could just keep going for hours. We'll have to have a round two.
Absolutely.
On this, but I just want to let it rest with those words. So good. Before we sign off here, tell everybody, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find your book? All of the things.
Easiest way is at my website, DustinKleinschmidt.com. There will be a link in the show notes that is spelled correctly, so that makes it easy.
Right? The pressure's on now.
Yeah. So the book is called The Wilderness Way, Finding Freedom in Life's Fractures. It's available on Amazon. There's links on my website. I also worked with a group to release a worship album that kind of became a companion to it, the album's called In Wild Days from the Wilderness Worship Collective. And it was a lot of the same kind of themes of like, what does it look like to live simply in the complexities of life? What does it look like to trust God in the midst of hard things? All those kinds of themes. And so that was a really fun project to kind of partner in with the book. It's on all the streaming platforms and you can listen to it. And I like you mentioned, I do some coaching with leaders and people who are just wrestling with things. But
sure.
Even beyond that, like if people just want to reach out, I love being able to help any way I can as people try and navigate life in the wilderness.
Absolutely, man. Dustin, thank you so much for
Matthew,
sharing your story. And as I always try to sign off on these, you're listening to this and you're just entering into the wilderness. Get a hold of us. Go to woundedleadership.com. There's a tab that says Tell Your Story. It's just a guide that's going to help you unpack where you're at. Step one, naming the wound clearly. You may not be able to do the whole thing, but start through the process and embrace the wilderness and understand that's where you can find some of the biggest places of beauty. I have a phrase that I use, finding purpose in the pain.
Yes.
So if you find yourself there, get a hold of us. If you need somebody to walk with, get a hold of us there at woundedleadership.com. All things there. Dustin, thank you so much. We're going to have to get together sometime over coffee. And
heck yeah.
We're just going to have a good time. I'll have you back sometime. Let's do this again.
Absolutely.
Dustin, appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for Wounded Leadership, Stories from the Wounded. If today's conversation stirred something in you, whether it brought up your own pain, gave you language for what you've been carrying, or reminded you that someone else understands, we want you to know that this community is here for you. You don't have to navigate this alone. If you are a pastor, a church leader, or ministry family member who has been wounded, or if you know someone who is, I want to encourage you to take the next step. Visit woundedleadership.com, where you'll find resources, biblical counseling, and a community dedicated to one thing: helping those who have been wounded in ministry find healing. And if you have a story of your own, we would love to hear it. Head to woundedleadership.com and click Tell Your Story. Your story could be the lifeline someone else needs to hear. If this podcast has meant something to you, please take a moment to leave us a review, share this episode with someone who needs it, and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. As Martin Luther once wrote, "This life is not health, but healing, not being, but becoming. The process is not yet finished, but it is going on." That is our prayer for every leader who listens to this podcast, because healing is a journey, not a destination. Keep going. This is Wounded Leadership, Stories from the Wounded.